始まるぜ俺の
KO!
ここの出来が違うんだよ
Here's something never seen in Game Over Hell, a fighting game. You can thank the Red Hangover podcast community for this. Garou Mark of the Wolves was chosen by the review crew this month, by which I mean it suddenly turned the tables on Alex Kidd in Shinobi World when all the fighting fans in the community came out of the shadows to rally this game in the poll. No, I'm not salty, you're salty.
Garou, Mark of the Wolves.
If I was still using the mini review label, this would have been a mini. This is going to be short because, being honest with you all, I'm not good at fighting games, and I can't get technical about what makes a good or bad gameplay in a fighting game. Of all the genres, fighting games require some of the most practice and coordination, which for players like me who aren't too interested in sticking with the same game for too long after you see the staff credits, well, that dooms our ability to get good. Quick side note, that's also why I don't play other online games besides Final Fantasy XIV and sometimes Splatoon 3. I have no time or patience to practice in more than a couple competitive or co-op games. That's time and energy I could be spending playing a good single player game. Now you see where I come from, let's get into Garou. Mark of the Wolves is part of a sub-series within the Fatal Fury franchise. It came out to the mighty Neo Geo in the tail end of 1999. If you never heard of Fatal Fury, it's the series that introduced the insanely popular and highly requested Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC character, Terry Bogard. Garou has a plot and it makes as much sense as the average fighting game plot, which is very little. Every character has some kind of end goal, and to get that, they need to beat the crap out of other fighters in some kind of tournament. Understanding the bigger picture isn't clear-cut, but each character's individual arcs are serviceable, and it's nice to see what they have to say about every opponent. Every character has a different dialogue based on who they're fighting, which helps flesh them out. You will recognize Terry Bogard from previous games, and you will think you recognize Kim, but that's actually one of Kim's children. Anyone else think it's bizarre how little Terry seems to have aged compared to the children of the classic characters? Anyway, almost the entire roster is made of new characters, each with fairly cool designs but not so great names. Kim's other son is called Dong Juan. Dong Juan, get it? And this guy who is supposed to be Brazilian goes by Kashnud Bat. He couldn't look more Japanese if he tried. Well, I guess that's not true. He could definitely look more Japanese. Anyway, his name is Marco Rodriguez, which is more accurate than the vast majority of Brazilian fighting character names out there.
Round 1.
Fight!
I played this game using the ACA or ACA release of the game on Xbox Series X, which doesn't feature any kind of training mode or a separate menu to select versus and options. Like every ACA port, there is some kind of emulation menu you can access and change some of the settings of the arcade, including the difficulty level and the continue service, which is a handicap the game offers when you choose to continue after losing a match. Gameplay isn't too fast or too slow, the game encourages going for rush attacks, which is how they call combos here. I found it difficult to chain combos together unless I use special moves that hit more than once, but that's not a deal breaker. I didn't look up any combinations, but most character moves seem easy enough to pull off by doing some good old quarter circle plus one of the face buttons. My biggest complaint about the controls is that it's hard to memorize what face button in the Xbox is supposed to mirror what Neo Geo controller button. I already get confused about button prompts for any Xbox game, because of the stupid layout of swapping A and B or X and Y around in relation to Nintendo controllers. That's partially a me thing, partially the fact these arcade ports are really better played with arcade controllers. If you play in the default difficulty and you're not a big fighting game fan, you're going to hate this version of the game. The highest it could go was difficulty level 2. The default is 4. Opponent AI is merciless and they seem to read your input. On level 1, you can pretty much wing it all the way to the credits, especially if you play as Don Juan or Hotaru, who I found to be the easiest characters to learn. On level 2 it's too easy, but you don't feel like you're cheating anymore. I couldn't and still can't quite wrap my head around the strategy involving the top system. It's a unique feature to Mark of the Wolves, where it's set while a third of your health bar needs to be reached before your character starts splashing, getting a small power up and health regen when they do, and enabling you to use a special move that can only be used when flashing. The game says you can use the move by pressing 2 buttons together, but I couldn't tell if I was doing it right or not. You can also press A plus B together to do an evasive move, which I was doing accidentally very often because I'm a dumb button masher.
KO!
強いな。
きっと会えるよね。
Nothing says power of kindness like beating the out of someone until they can get up anymore. Even without technique in fighting games, I think I can tell this is a good one. It feels very responsive and every move has the exact way you expect based on their animation. They had to be pushing the limits of the Neo Geo and DS hardware at this point. Everything in the game is handcrafted pixel art and frame-by-frame animation. With how smooth character movements are and how detailed the backgrounds, stage intros and fighters look, it's surreal they were able to pull this off. I'm not going to say this is one of the best looking 2D fighters of its time though, because Darkstalkers 3, Street Fighter 3 were already out long before this game. It's just very impressive by Neo Geo hardware standards. There's also a Dreamcast version which isn't as good as the arcade. The music is good, but it's hard to pay attention to it when you're busy trying not to get hit too much. The sound effects are satisfying and crunchy. SNK never disappoints in sound direction. The quality of the sound is another matter. It doesn't sound great, certainly not by 1999 standards. The game still sounds like early 90s Neo Geo. That's completely serviceable, don't get me wrong, but when you look at the audio of the composition, it makes Garou a little more dated by comparison. Let me remind you again, this is a review for the arcade port of Garou Mark of the Wolves, which is very light in content. You insert a coin, choose a character, and try to get to the ending or leave your name in the player ranking. No bells or whistles. Speaking of ranking, it's time to rate this game. ACA Neo Geo Garou Mark of the Wolves gets a 7 out of 10. As a 2D fighting game, it's very solid. It tries to make things fresh with the TOP or top mechanic and evasive moves, but with none of that really sticking around since I don't think this brought any advancement to the fighting game genre. The characters are great, but the roster is a bit small and I would have preferred if maybe 2 or 3 characters from the previous games returned instead of just Terry. It looks phenomenal for a Neo Geo arcade game. It sounds great for a Neo Geo arcade game. I just don't think it was doing anything better than other fighting games of the second half of the 90s. There hasn't been another Garou game until an announcement for Street of Wolves that happened this year. I don't have a reason to think I'm wrong, but with how I'm not super big into fighting games, I could as well be missing some important mechanic accomplishments here. This is a game I recommend to hardcore 2D fighting game fans only, if they're curious. If you're one of them, pick this up on sale and you're gonna have a good time. Thanks for watching and take care.